If you're in the market for a subcompact SUV, then you're spoilt for choice. There's plenty of good ones out there, but one of the best and not necessarily cheapest or newest is this, the Mazda CX-3. The CX-3 has been on sale for several years now and is actually coming towards the end of its model life, soon to be replaced by the CX-30, but it's still one of Mazda's most popular cars here in Australia. They sold nearly 13,000 of these last year. So that explains why they have two subcompact SUVs in their lineup. Based on the Mazda 2, this car is starting to look just a little bit long in the tooth. It was based on the original iteration of Kodo design, which dates back about a decade or so, and has evolved into newer Mazdas like the CX-30 and the current generation of the CX-5 and the CX-9. I did get a bit of a shock the first time that I opened the boot of this car because it looks incredibly small. Mazda claims it's 264 litres and I thought, no way. But then I noticed a handle here on the floor. Expecting to find the spare tyre underneath it, I actually found a further deeper storage space. So that's kind of handy. You can have this extra bit of flat floor that you can keep in your garage, assuming you have one. Drop the rear seats and you get an extra 1,000 litres of space. In the engine bay, we've got a motor that actually looks pretty large for a car this size. It's not huge in output though. It's a 2-litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine that drives power to the front wheels only via a 6-speed transmission, your choice of automatic or manual. It outputs 110 kilowatts of power and 195 newton meters of torque with a combined fuel economy of 6.3 litres per 100 kilometres. So all up, just slightly less powerful than the similar engine you'll find in the CX-30. It's not just on the outside where this car is showing its age, but on the inside too, with this interior really harking back about a decade or so to Mazdas of yesteryear. There's not a lot of soft touch materials. There's just one strip here in the middle that feels quite nice. It's actually got some real stitching on it, but either side of it is an acre of hard, scratchy plastic. We do have some nice carbon fibre print plastic here on the armrests on the doors, but that's really about it. Aside from the interior design, the biggest difference between this car and the CX-30 is the center console screen, with the CX-3 still stuck with Mazda's old software, which doesn't really lack in usability so much. It just doesn't live up to current expectations of graphic design and functionality. It feels quite old now. A big tick for it though is that it does operate as a touch screen when the car is at a stop, where the CX-30s can only be used with the rotary dial. But unlike some of this car's Korean rivals, it doesn't get wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You'll still need a USB cable to use them. We've got some fairly rudimentary air conditioning controls underneath that, which can get a little bit fiddly to just get the temperature quite right. Then we've got a couple of USB outputs, a 12-volt outlet, space here for your phone, which is just too small. I mean, this is designed for phones that were around a decade ago, and phones have grown a bit since then, so there's really no way to properly store your phone in here, which is a little bit annoying. A pretty simple, straightforward center console down the bottom here. We've got the rotary dial to operate the touch screen for when the car is moving, auto hold for the brake, volume control, and the electronic park brake. Small little cubby here, which I've got my wallet sitting in, and a tiny little center bin there. The seating position's actually pretty good. I'm quite low in the cabin here, so there's plenty of headroom, which is nice, but not great visibility out the front. Just like the Mazda 3, the bonnet of this car kind of drops away quite rapidly and you really can't see the front corners of the car at all. So until you get used to it, just be careful in car parks. Good visibility through the wing mirrors, and there's blind spot monitoring there because there's not great blind spot visibility through the rear windows there just because of the high sills, and the back window is actually fairly small, so you're not seeing a huge amount there through the center rear vision mirror. The steering wheel is the same old school wheel that we saw in the CX-9, and it's not as good as the newer wheel, but this is an older car, so I kind of forgive that. It has a nice feel to it. It's got some stitching on it. The instrument cluster is another story though, and really does harken back to, say, 2005. It's pretty old school. So we've got an analog dial here for the speedo in the middle, and then two old LED type displays there that look like they've just stepped out of the 1980s. to show you some very limited information there. I can't think of any car on the market that at the moment that doesn't have at least some sort of a center LED screen that you can scroll through, and that's just completely absent here. The seats are cloth and comfortable enough. I mean, they're sort of what you expect at this position in the market. Full manual adjustment, although there's not really a lot you can do with them apart from going backwards and forwards, and well, yeah, that's really about it. The back seat of the CX-3, which is a subcompact SUV, I must remind you, isn't really going to work for somebody as tall as me, or at least behind my own seating position anyway, and I'm 190 centimeters tall, so my knees are firmly into the back of the seat in front of me. I feel sorry for the driver, and there's really not much headroom, and yeah, this isn't going to work for me at all. If you're short or you're a child, then yeah, you'll be fine. Not really a lot going on back here at all. There's no air vents. These seats aren't really the most comfortable, if I'm honest, and there is a nice little cup holder here. So the CX-3 is a subcompact SUV, and it's small, and it really does actually feel small on the road. So much so that when you're driving around, you notice that people do treat you a little bit differently, especially when compared to, say, the CX-9, the car I had last week, which is the largest car Mazda make. It's a 7-seater and it is huge. People get out of your way when you're trying to change lanes or you're going through a roundabout. In the CX-3, it's a different story. I really do feel almost invisible in this car a lot of the time. A fair bit of noise from this engine. It's not very refined. It's almost a growly kind of noise that almost sounds like a diesel, but it's not. But noise aside, the ride is actually pretty smooth. The suspension feels pretty good. The performance from the engine isn't bad. I think Mazda actually do naturally aspirated engines better than just about anybody else, and they're a bit of a dying breed because almost everyone seems to be whacking a turbocharger into all of their engines these days, but Mazda are kind of sticking with naturally aspirated ones as much as possible. And this one's actually pretty good. So who's the target market for a CX-3 these days? Well, at this lower entry end of the market, I think actually parents may be looking to buy their kids a reliable new car because this is fantastically well made. Mazdas are really reliable. It comes with a 5-year warranty, uses very little fuel, it's not incredibly powerful, has enough room for young people to get their stuff around. It's not really a family mobile, it's a bit too small for that. It doesn't miss out on any key safety gear, and despite being an older design, it still looks pretty good. It is a bit of an adjustment going back to reading the speed from an analog dial only. I'm used to having digital numbers in front of me, and that's normally all I look at, and now just having to rely on an old school dial, I keep thinking it's not accurate for some reason. There's only one extra drive mode in this car, and it's called Sport, and you just flick the switch down here on the center console, and well, the only thing that really happens is the car drops down a gear and makes a bit more noise. There's no paddle shifters on the steering wheel, but you can change gears manually by shifting the gear shifter over to the right here and shifting up and down. But I think a manual version of this car would actually be really fun to drive because Mazdas do manuals better than just about anybody. And the Mazda 3 and the MX-5 are the most fun you can have driving a manual. It's one thing I've always found interesting about shopping centre car parks. Everyone tries to park as close to the entrance as they can possibly get, despite the fact that they have just spent hours walking many kilometres around a shopping centre. They don't want to walk an extra few metres to their car at the end, like that makes some sort of a difference. The CX-3 is a reliable, good-looking car, but technology and design trends have moved on and left this car behind. So, unfortunately, it doesn't really represent great value anymore, and there are better cars on the market. The Kia Stonic and Volkswagen T-Roc are two that leap to mind. But the replacement for the CX-3, the CX-30, is more expensive, so it could be a good time to jump on the CX-3 bandwagon while you can.